Hello, this vid's called EU Presidency. Mr. Obama meet and Mr. and Who meet President Who. Who is the new EU President and what will this mean for Europe? Will he have much influence on the outcome of such important issues as Turkey's membership? And what will his effect be on European economic performance? Well, let's define what the EU presidency means. Well, the EU president is the president of the Council of Europe, and he replaces the current system whereby alternating governments become the head of state of Europe, so that the United States or China or Russia, for instance, um, have to deal with so many different governments, 27 different governments in effect, because every 6 months or every so many years the government changes. Okay, but currently it's being held by the Swedish Prime Minister, but after January the 1st, 2010, this will be held by the new uh, EU president that was elected by the European Council, which is made up of the elected heads of the European governments. Now, his name is Herman Van Rompuy, and he's the former Belgian Prime Minister. Now, Belgium has just gone through is going through a constitutional and economic crisis, and it has been since 2007. Uh, Fundamentally, Belgium is split between the Flemish, or Dutch, as I should say, Dutch-speaking majority and a Flemish minority. Now, most of us in England are basically familiar with Belgium through basically the film Bruges, um, uh, holidays there, and Poirot. So our knowledge is pretty laughable and pitiful, I'm afraid to say, and so is mine about Belgium. But from what I can gather, um, he Herman van Rompuy is probably um, somebody who's not very well known in Britain, but he is nor is our representative for the EU trade. Um, but let's just focus on the presidency for this talk. I'll do another video for the trade minister. Um, but she is more of an operator, and she has a very good connection throughout the trade um, relations, and she's always at parties and the operating, making contacts. So she's a sort of networker. Whereas Herman Van Rompuy is um, maybe considered that the EU presidency is not the same as a head of state, although it will represent people um, of the EU to foreign presidencies, which is why I chose the title, trying to be funny. President Obama and President Who meet President Who. Who is Herman Van Rompuy? Well, he comes from quite a good family. He's got 4 children. His father was an economist, and so was he. He was an economist as well. Um, his sister has also worked in government and NGOs. He was the president. He was the prime minister of Belgium, and of course awaits the ruling of the King of Belgium as to whether he can take the post. But this is a political convention that will probably, of course, be granted, because Belgium has a constitutional monarchy, just like Great Britain has a constitutional monarchy. Now, he's expressed opposition to Turkey joining the EU. He said Turkey is not Europe and it will never be Europe, and so there's some problems there for the UK government, because the UK government has been very positive on enlargement to the East European countries and to Turkey itself, because this is what NATO and America would really like, is to have Turkey in Europe. But there's a strategic move by the United States, because the United States gives Turkey massive amounts of military aid, whereas they can't really do that with Germany. In fact, the Americans are even considering moving their troops out of Germany, and even the Conservatives in Great Britain have said that they would like to move the British Army of the Rhine, or disband the British Army of the Rhine, and move it to either Eastern Europe, or to disband it and use it for more expeditionary work like Afghanistan, Iraq, possibly Sudan and Somalia. Contact of mine in the British Army was expecting to go into Sudan or North Korea. These things have been on the table for at least the last 5 years. So contingency plans are being made, but this was not, obviously not somebody below in the general staff. This was just a rumour that was going around in the officer corps. Now, this opposition to Turkey joining really places Herman Van Rompuy quite close to the German population, if not the German government's view, that Turkey is to be resisted to joining, and that really the Eastern European countries should have deeper and deeper integration now that the EU has expanded. There's also the problem with whether Herman Van Rompuy will see Ukraine and Georgia, which are asking for or deciding whether they're going to have closer ties with NATO and then maybe the EU. Because both those countries have large Russian minorities who would like to, in fact, I think 45% of Ukraine is still Russian speaking, who would still like to be part of Russia, really. And that's the area that has all the industry in it. But what can Herman Van Rompuy do as EU president? Well, I think he might be a signal that the EU has got to decrease its debt, and this has been a focus of his during his time as Belgian Prime Minister. He weathered the political storm. There's been extremely high profile crisis within Belgium, because of Belgian ministers being charged with corruption charges that are close to NATO, with them making deals with NATO arms, associated arms companies. And there's also been, of course, the terrible criminal scandals of organised crime and people trafficking in Belgium. Now, Herman Van Rompuy has not been involved with any of these, and he's been investigated along with the rest of the Belgian government. So he has managed to go through his life without any aspersions made on his character. Now, this might be a good thing for the EU presidency. He may be able to help solve the economic crisis in Europe, because he's an economist, and he will be able to work closely with Angela Merkel. It also details that the EU will probably work in its fashion as a international organisation rather than going to act like a nation state. What this means is that the 27 members are still firmly in control of Europe as a confederation rather than a federal republic of a United States of Europe. This may happen in the future, and obviously I'm quite positive although Angela Merkel is a conservative and I am a social democrat, or loosely speaking, that she might become president in the future. I think this would set a good example. But for the moment, let's get to know Herman Van Rompuy and give him a chance. I think he might be good for Europe.